During a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing this week, Kari Lake, the leader of the government's propaganda arm, Voice of America.
Former gubernatorial and Senate candidate Kari Lake, she appeared at her first congressional hearing today as a Trump administration appointee.
It comes just a few days after Lake announced the virtual dismantling of the agency where she is a senior advisor.
Of the government's propaganda arm, Voice of America, was being questioned by Democratic Representative Greg Stanton, who of course happens to be a representative from the state of Arizona, where Kari Lake has tried multiple times to run for public office and failed humiliatingly.
Is Donald Trump even running a presidential campaign? And I have seen countless ads for Hillary Clinton. I have not seen a single one for Donald Trump, and I live in the pivotal swing state of the state of Florida.
And CNN projects Donald Trump will carry the state of Florida.
Hillary Clinton, she's going to win this election.
She's going to win this election.
The latest set of polling data should absolutely terrify Donald Trump and anyone out there dumb enough to think that Donald Trump would be a good president. But this man clearly does not want to be president because he's not even really campaigning. So Hillary Clinton right now, she's not just killing Donald Trump, she is destroying him by a larger margin than Democrats have seen since May of 1996.
Where Kari Lake has tried multiple times to run for public office and failed humiliatingly.
It shows that she is running against the most easily beatable person in politics today. She's going to win. At this point, honest to God, anybody that the Democratic Party had put up would have won. And Hillary Clinton has this election locked in. Captain! I hate to call it this early, but it's pretty much done.
So Stanton decided to let everybody in the hearing know what a liar Kari Lake really is as she's sitting there testifying under oath. So here is how Stanton went after Kari Lake. I've seen you in action, including your behavior in the last two elections. The American people cannot believe a word you say. You ran for governor in Arizona in 2022. You lost fair and square. Instead of conceding, you embarrassed yourself and our state. And to that, Kari Lake, who had just gotten verbally ripped to shreds, responded saying, "That was complete insanity. I wish I could yield back the last 5 minutes of my life, actually." Here's the thing, Kari. I know you thought you really had a great comeback, and she wasn't done. It actually does get much worse. But I just have to point out before I get into her, defamatory statements, that yielding back the last 5 minutes of your life would be to give back those 5 minutes to the man that just humiliated you. In essence, you're telling him you want to do it again.
Bullshit.
The phrase, "I yield back the last 5 minutes of my life," is a sarcastic or humorous expression of regret or frustration, typically after experiencing something the speaker found pointless, boring, or a waste of time. The last 5 minutes of my life refers to the time just spent doing something unfulfilling, like listening to a bad story, watching a terrible video, or sitting through a pointless meeting. It's mocking the idea of formality while making a point that the last 5 minutes were so bad the speaker wishes they could return them, as if to say, let's pretend those minutes never happened.
Yielding back the last 5 minutes of your life would be to give back those 5 minutes to the man that just humiliated you. In essence, you're telling him you want to do it again.
Is a sarcastic or humorous expression of regret or frustration.
That's what yield back the last 5 minutes of my life means. So just to be grammatical here, what you said actually indicated you wanted to relive those moments where he just absolutely eviscerated you.
You know what? This is bullshit. This is bullshit.
Then decided to go the defamatory route. Because after she said, "I wish I could yield back the last 5 minutes of my life," she then said, "I remember the stories about you where they said you had a gay lover and those were going to..." And as she attempted to keep talking, Democratic Representative Bill Keating jumped in and said, "Mr. Chairman, I hope Your Honor, what you have just is a caution to everyone, and I move that those words be," he was going to say stricken from the record, but Kari Lake once again interrupted and said, "Those lies could be broadcast today on Voice of America, and there was really nothing that could be done about it."
Your job is to tell the people of the world the truth about America. The American people cannot believe a word you say. We're angry at the chaos. Chaos in healthcare, for example, with the proposed dismantling of our Medicaid system, which would affect tens of millions of Americans.
Guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, you shouldn't be asking me that question.
They're angry about the dismantling of our economy with these tariffs.
Of course, Trump's initial imposition of tariffs wreaked havoc on American markets back in the spring, but now the markets have rebounded and grown. The S&P 500, NASDAQ hit record highs just yesterday. And it's not just the stock market. Inflation, the great economic fear of recent times, seems to be tamed.
Because what people are so frustrated about is not just what they're doing in terms of taking Medicaid away, proposing to take Medicaid away from tens of millions of our Americans, denying them the opportunity to see a primary care physician.
I'm not going to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Now we're going to get fraud out of there.
And the American people understand exactly what's going on. And it's one of the reasons why these town halls have been so huge. And I am so happy to be here for this wonderful town hall. And it's one of the reasons why these town halls have been so huge. You ran for governor in Arizona in 2022. You lost fair and square. Instead of conceding, you embarrassed yourself and our state by lying. Again and again, I've seen you in action, including your behavior in the last 2 elections.
Which are not false at all, Greg. Kari Lake's opinion on what happened on the election in 2022, 2024, 2020 are much more valid than Katie Hobbs's, who was the Secretary of State, who then rigged the election to win it for herself.
You are an adjudicated liar and a 2-time political
Chairman, I move to take down
in Arizona.
those
I have
words,
one
please.
final question.
Chairman,
reclaiming my time.
I'd like to take down those words.
It's the
gentleman's.
I do not yield. I have one final question for you, Ms. Lake. You have a chance to answer. Let me one final question.
The gentlelady will suspend, please.
Well, Arizona has another election for governor next year. Will you do us all a favor and run it back and run for governor again? I yield.
The gentlelady,
no more questions.
Can I respond to some of that? Because that was complete insanity. I wish I could yield back the last 5 minutes of my life, actually. You weren't here. You came in late. And we're talking about USAGM today, the Agency for Global Media, and how they can put out absolute abject lies, and we can't control any. We have no say over what the editorial content is. And I would hope that you would not be okay with that. They could literally put out a lie about anybody here. And I know you've been the victim of that. I know you've been the victim. I remember the stories about you where they said you had a gay lover, and those were going on.
Mr. Chairman.
Can
I hope you honor what you just gave as a caution to everyone, and I moved those words be
to tell you that those kind of lies, and you said those were lies, those kind of lies could be broadcast today on VOA, and you couldn't pick up the phone, Representative Stanton, and call them and say, hey, you're putting out lies about me. You would not be able to do that because they would sue you for breaking the firewall. So lies are being told on Voice of America. It's inappropriate. You've been subjected to lies that you said were lies about you in the media before. And how would you like it if those lies were put on Voice of America right now? Because they could do it, and you couldn't do a thing about it. You couldn't stop it. You couldn't stop all those lies that you said were said about you if they went on Voice of America today. You'd have to sit and take it.
Okay, I thank the gentlelady, and I appreciate the dialogue. Ruling on the member, she was responding, and I thought rather complimentary that in fact those were untrue, and she was defending that. So
that's what he says.
I'll leave it as that. I think Mr. Stanton would agree that those were untrue statements, and she said so.
So what Lake was attempting to do is say like, hey, remember that fake story about you having a gay lover? She wanted to smear him in Congress. That's why she did it.
Yeah, so what's the problem? She was just explaining that they were lies. She didn't say, well, I read an article and I think you have a gay lover. That's not what she said at all. She said there were articles about your gay lovers written by who knows who, and it would be nice if you could respond to those, right? And have some sort of conversation about those so you could refute those claims, because obviously it's not true. It's a lie. I got smeared. You got smeared. So what's the problem?
She could have just said there was a fake story about you, and Voice of America, you know, they could run that and nobody can like stop anybody from doing it. That's why we got to cut it and kill it, right? There's so many things wrong with that. But let me go ahead and tell you this, because I had to do some digging, did a little bit of research. You can, in fact, sue Voice of America for defamation. Now, technically, Voice of America is, of course, a government outlet. But at the same time, being a government entity does not completely shield you from defamation, slander, libel lawsuits.
No shit, Sherlock.
Actual malice standard still exists. If a government official goes out with actual malice and slanders somebody, you can sue them. You absolutely 100% can. They are not shielded from the law. The bar is just a little bit higher. So Kari Lake's assertion that we can go on Voice of America and just say whatever, even if it's lies and nobody can do anything, that's why it sucks, that's not true. That is a lie. So Stanton, once again, proved correct because we can't believe a damn word that Kari Lake says.
Republicans love to tell us that undocumented immigrants are coming over to the United States and just committing crimes left and right, hopping that border, raping and killing their way across this great country. But as it turns out, new research actually shows that that's literally not true.
That's not true. That is a lie.
Authorities in Texas have captured the illegal immigrant who killed 5 people, including a 9-year-old child.
An Uber driver who was living in the country illegally is charged with raping, assaulting, and robbing young women in California. 4 victims have been identified, and there could be more in counties northwest of Los Angeles.
An illegal immigrant charged with the murder of a 22-year-old Georgia nursing student, Laken Riley, is the Venezuelan who reportedly crossed illegally into El Paso back in 2022 and was released into the U.S. on parole.
So Stanton, once again, proved correct because we can't believe a damn word that Kari Lake says.